In this section of the exam, you may be asked about war, just wars, or pacifism. Christians do not believe that war can be easily justified. Many Christians who agree that war is sometimes necessary say that such a war would have to meet all the criteria of the just war, and if it does not, then war should be avoided. Thomas Aquinas, a Christian monk in the 13th century, came up with the first 3 criteria of what would make a war just or fair. This was then added to, and so there are 6 criteria to a just war. You ought to know these for your exam. Criteria 1 says the war must be started by the proper authority. Criteria 2 says there has to be a good reason to go to war, for example, to protect people. Criteria 3 says that everything must be done to make sure good instead of evil comes from the war. Criteria 4 says war must be the very last resort. Criteria 5, the force used must be no more than is necessary to win, and civilians should not be targeted. And criteria 6 says there must be a reasonable chance of success. The Bible itself contains different views on whether violence is ever acceptable. In fact, in the Old Testament, people are often told by God to go to war to gain the land that he promises to them. For example, the prophet Joel tells people to prepare for war. Christian realism also says that because we live in a sinful world, sometimes war is necessary to overcome evils. This is supported by St. Augustine from the 5th century, who went as far as saying that wars that aim to punish evil were in fact peaceful acts. These are all reasons why some Christians accept that war at times is necessary. On the other hand, one of the commandments is do not kill, and the Old Testament does look forward to a time of peace as an ideal situation. This is seen particularly in the book of Micah. The New Testament teaches about the need for peace and forgiveness. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches that peacemakers would be called children of God, as they would be doing what God wants. Jesus teaches we should love people and not have hatred. Some Christians, therefore, believe it is never right to fight or use violence, even when other people are violent or aggressive. These people are called pacifists. They believe that the way to deal with conflict must always be non-violent. Non-violent methods can include sanctions, peaceful protests, boycotts, campaigns, and negotiations. The Quakers, who are a group of Christians, are all pacifists. They believe that it is never right to engage in violence or war. In fact, in the past, Quakers have been conscientious objectors, refusing to fight but accepting other roles, such as ambulance drivers during the war. By doing this, they believe they're standing up against violence and challenging those who think it's acceptable. If you are asked about Christian attitudes to war in the exam, make sure you include both their attitudes that support the use of war, as well as those Christians who would argue that their response to war is a non-violent one.